Your attention, please. Best newsletter ever. Subscribed. Today we're discussing why your brand needs an enemy. So, it's the whole idea of like, what's the point of your brand? What gets your brand waking up in the morning? Whether it be a personal brand or a regular brand, having like, so like Nike's ethos is like supreme winning mentality, excellence, blah blah blah. So their enemy would be like mediocrity, kind of thing. Now, how bad do brands need that as a thing?
I guess it's brand specific. I think one thing that stuck out to me, I don't know why, but Innocent Smoothies. You remember them? They're still a thing, right? You know them?
No.
So Innocent Smoothies are they in New Zealand? I think they are. Yeah. It's literally
Just
just
energy drink guy.
okay. So it's literally just fruit, right?
Yeah.
And fruit smoothies. Sure. But they I mean they were acquired by Coca-Cola probably about 10 maybe 10 years ago. And they've been around for about 15 years, and their whole thing was like every single bit of writing on the bottle, and this is not a new thing now, but they did pioneer it. You know how it's ingredients, blah, 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 and like it was basically they took away all of the corporate guff from all the packaging, and when it had their ingredients list, rather than it being like tiny kind of like Times New Roman font, it was a big thing on my label. It was like ingredients: 4 bananas, 3 apples, 2 crushed oranges, and nothing else. And I think their enemy was, maybe I'm being a bit too broad scope here, but I think their enemy was kind of just corporatism in general. And I think to loop back to your question, does a brand need an enemy? Does it need one? I don't know. But to position yourself apart from something, I think very, very, very much helps.
100%. It's like a brand doesn't need an enemy, but the enemy is a perfect shortcut to identifying what you're not and therefore what you are. Because for many brands, they really struggle to be distinct. And the best way to do that is like, well, what aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, we're not this. And if there's an overlap between that and your target audience, then perfect.
Yeah.
Run down that angle.
I think it could be like even a really good way to like harness like a community or something, because you could be known for something that you love, but you could also be known for something that you hate or like don't stand for. So there's like community in that of like, I don't know if this adds to this conversation, but it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So like, if your enemy is like mediocrity and you're the brand that I like, I'm like, okay, cool, I can rock with you now because your enemy is my enemy as well.
Yeah, I mean that's a question that we got asked in school. That's like, is the enemy of your enemy my friend? I remember we were like literally at 15, and we were all like, and then suddenly everyone was like, wait, hang on, that's actually way more profound and philosophical than we think. It's such a tough question. But yeah, I think I just totally agree with Richie. I think it's like you have to really define yourself, right? Especially in a crowded market, because any business you get into, what's the old phrase? Either be better or be first, right? To be first, you've got to literally invent something new or a new market. To be better, I mean, that's so tough, right? To be best, sorry, is so tough. So yeah, it's not about defining what you are. It's easy to define what you're not, because saying, hey, I'm this thing, everyone's like, yeah, okay, we don't care. But saying, hey, all of these things you already know, we're not that, is a quicker route to grabbing people's attention.
Yeah, for sure.
I think like some of the ones that are like really popular is like Nike, Red Bull is like against their enemy, I guess, would be like mediocrity. Disney's would be like against the idea of growing up and always keeping that like inner child in you. Pause. Just stuff like that, man. Well, let me have that.
You can have yourself, eh?
No, but I think it's a really good way to have an elongated legacy of a brand, because it's one thing to have an enemy as a competitor, but it's another thing to have an enemy as a like concept or as an idea, and you can have that for centuries. But I feel like a brand beef could only last so long.
Yeah. One thing I really like about the write-up was, and this is so true, is you don't need to necessarily be negative. Like, you can have your enemy and have that enemy portrayed throughout your marketing without being negative or bashing whatever that is, whether it's a figurehead or like a cultural norm that you kind of disagree with as a brand. Like that PlayStation ad example is really good. If those who haven't seen it, there's a PlayStation ad. The enemy was essentially kiddie gaming, when the whole ad campaign was essentially showing adults playing games, like serious gaming for like adults, not just kids. Like, these are proper games, but none of it was like, oh, these like it's not shitty kids games on PlayStation. It was like, no, like you're an adult, you can play PlayStation, like you should play PlayStation. This is made for you. So it's like you can have that enemy, but that positions you in a certain way so that you can speak to your audience in a way that they're going to agree with you. Because actually, like this is great. Like I want this.
Yeah.
Probably because most people grow up with them, but.
That's such an interesting point about. Sorry, just I might be a bit off topic here, but about how the landscape of gaming has changed. Because I think I'm not a massive gamer, but I've always had a PlayStation since I was a kid, as many people have. And I think back to, I was born in '93. I think back to when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And if you'd have said to me like an adult, like a 35 plus gamer, you would think of like bloke in his pants, like covered in crisps, like do you know what I mean? Unemployed, but like, who is this guy? Yeah, literally. But now, like you say, that is a thing. Like it really, really is a thing. Like I think my dad would play a bit of Spyro with me or whatever, and I'd be like, "Wow, this is such a thrill!" Like this, middle-aged man, like my dad playing games. But
games are for kids.
Literally, but now it really isn't. It's like actually a lot. I mean, could you see a 6-year-old playing Elden Ring or whatever? Like it just probably wouldn't happen. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I think the rebrand of video games is really interesting. I think it comes with the like the rise of like horror games.
Okay.
Like I remember like back in PS2 days, like Resident Evil, like that shit has scarred me for life. Like the scenery and stuff. Sure, it was like pixelated and stuff, but like you shouldn't be a 5-year-old playing that game.
Yeah,
Even like Doom.
Yes,
Like Doom
Oh
away
my
for kids. I was trying to play that on like the family computer when I was little. That was scarring.
That was scary. Yeah, I remember that game.
It was like 6 pixels, but somehow terrifying.
4 of them.
His face. It's like, oh, there's a red pixel. He's bleeding. Like,
I think also like games that the open world games. I mean, personally, I've always liked like GTA or Red Dead 2. So I think a lot of it is escapism.
Skyrim, like whole Elder Scrolls.
But this is it, right? Like I think back to when you're a kid,
my life.
I would not, but I would not have been able to appreciate those games as a kid. I would have liked it, sure, but to truly feel that escape. I mean, sometimes, again, sorry, tangent, but like back in when I was living in Wellington half the time, I would play Red Dead 2 and I would just have a podcast in and I just roam. And I was like, I'm not playing this to achieve anything. I'm just like switching off.
It's like a guy going for a bike ride, listening to a podcast, but you're riding your horse in Red Dead.
In my bed.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy.
Fair. Yeah, I think the whole idea of like, because like what would like PlayStation's enemy be?
Oh gosh,
Well, that was kiddie gaming and that particular ad campaign.
Yeah.
So it was like the idea that video games are for kids.
Yeah.
but this is an interesting one because their enemy. Yeah, when you think about it, it's not as clear cut as you first think because you say like no, but because when you say to yourself like okay, essentially games consoles. I mean Xbox and PlayStation. Obviously, if we had like a ultra nerd in the room, they'd be and I said they're the same. They would be like they're different because of X, Y, Z. But they are a high spec video game console, right? So really they're kind of the same. So you say to yourself, well, are they actually enemies or is just health and fitness and not playing video games their enemies? Because really it's like Pepsi and Coke. Well, their enemies are each other, but actually if you're drinking a carbonated cola flavored beverage, then that's half the battle. Do you see where I'm going with that? The enemy is not each other. The enemy is getting you to that product in the first place, I think.
Because then it's easier to like sway consumers between different companies as opposed to getting them to be invested in the product as an idea.
Well, you gotta fight. You got to fight for something that's like not shared common ground. Like Coke, for example, if they just went, our enemy's Pepsi, it'd be like kind of edgy, but it would die off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But they've just like rooted themselves in their enemy being, I guess, the antithesis of happiness, which would be sadness or boring.
Yep.
Like if you just like really dig your feet into that and like, what does that mean? Okay, Christmas, then we're doing Christmas because we're about happiness. Like really digging your feet in there. And it's like, it's not about Pepsi. It's about a feeling that they're against, that they want to solve, that they know that their target audience care about. I mean, it's pretty easy on for Coke, but it's such a ubiquitous brand that they can probably spend enough to really own that territory. Like, how do you monopolize happiness? Like, crazy.
Well, they've bloody done it.
Ambitious, but obviously it's made some impact for them.
Yeah.
And you're so right with ubiquitous as well, because I saw this clip. I forget the chap's name. He's all over TikTok where he does the sort of like short round guy, and he does the economics like lectures. Rory Jennings, is that his
Rory
name?
Sutherland?
Rory Sutherland, that's it. And he's just
Chelsea
something like yeah, mental. And
How did you get that from there?
yeah, really good. He did this thing about Coke the other day about how ubiquitous it is. It doesn't matter if you're in a 3-star three Michelin star restaurant in the foothills of a Swiss mountain, or you're at a beach shack in like a UK coastal town. Coca-Cola is not out of place anywhere. That's insane. That's madness.